This is Bishop John speaking to you from St. Athanasius Church in Echo Park, part of St. Paul's Commons, your diocesan headquarters, inviting you please to excuse the beautiful Christmas display behind me. La Virgen de Guadalupe requires no apology. Her feast day was celebrated last Friday, but it does look a little Christmassy for Advent. I've personally noticed something about the season of Advent once we reach and get beyond the third Sunday of Advent, Pink Candle Sunday, Gaudete Sunday. Something about that pause in the penitential, expectant feeling of Advent unleashes the final rush toward Christmas. But we're still in Advent, on the way to Christmas. I have been looking ahead to the Nativity by indulging my annual ritual of reading Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And I always have at my side the annotated Christmas Carol, which is for Christmas Carol fans the equivalent of a study Bible. And every year something different jumps out at me. And this year it was from the nephew's speech when he arrives at Scrooge and Marley to persuade his crabby uncle to come to Christmas dinner. And he gives a beautiful speech about the power and meaning of Christmas. And among other things, he says that Christmas is that time of year when we open our hearts to those, remember, Dickens is writing in a far more class-conscious time than ours. The nephew says, we open our hearts to those beneath us and see them as fellow passengers to the grave and not different creatures on the way to different places. This is the unifying power of Christmas, and it's still alive. We're not living in Dickens' England, but we're still living in a time of deep cultural and socioeconomic division. We are broadly divided against one another by race and nation, by orientation and identification, and also by socioeconomics. And when I was pondering this expression about fellow passengers, I of course went to my annotated Dickens. And I learned that when Dickens came to the United States after the book was published and it did public readings, he changed fellow passengers to a somewhat more active expression, fellow travelers. And he used it in a subsequent novel and wrote about how, in his view, we're all of us travelers together, beginning in the same place, headed to the same place, and capable when we encounter one another on the way of creating new narratives out of our encounters themselves. It's an invitation to continue to wear away at the divisions and walls that divide us against one another, and to do so in the spirit of Christmas. And this Christmas and Advent, in this particular political and cultural time, my invitation to you on behalf of the One Body and One Spirit annual appeal is to recognize that there are fellow Episcopal travelers, our siblings in the faith and in practice, whose experience of Christmas is different than for the majority. Most of us are shopping, preparing for Christmas dinner, getting ready for the holiday, going to church, going to work, even going to school without fear, because we live in the land of the free. But for another group of our fellow Americans, our fellow Episcopalians, those worshiping in churches where English is not the principal language of worship, over a score of churches where the principal language of worship is Korean, Mandarin, Cantonese, and Spanish. Our fellow travelers are afraid to go to church. They're afraid to go shopping because they're afraid that the sketchy white van in the parking lot is part of our government's cruel, racist ICE raids. And at all the churches that serve our fellow Episcopalians who are harboring this fear during Christmas, we expect that missions and parishes are going to have trouble paying the bills. And the One Body and One Spirit appeal needs to be prepared to enter the breach. So I'm urging you today once more to go to diocesela.org, click at the very top of the homepage. We make it easy both to give and to apply for a grant, with a particular focus this season on the churches that serve our neighbors, our fellow travelers, our fellow passengers who are most at risk. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for all you do to care for God's people and to glorify God during this season of joy.